أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. This is what I expected. I think when I tell people this in the beginning, they don't necessarily believe me. But this is inherently the problem that is afflicting the ummah today. What is the issue? What is the problem? Not my Khalid's got that. The issue and the problem is that learning takes sacrifice. It takes consistency. We send our kids to school and we tell them you have to go to school every day, all right, Monday through Friday. All right, we make sure that they do their work. We check their grades. Then after they finish with high school, we try to get them to go to college, and right, and then the same thing, because we understand. If the kid says, well, "I went to school one day this week already," no parent in their right mind is going to listen to that and think, "Oh, okay, you don't have to go the rest of the days in. I didn't know you went in on Monday," right? We understand that education and learning requires sacrifice. It requires dedication. It requires commitment. It requires that we actually truly want the knowledge, right, that we're supposed to be learning. So showing up for, and that's why I don't like doing one-off programs. I don't like doing one, like, we want you to come do a program about this particular topic. We want you to do a program about that particular topic, right? It's fine, but generally, you don't get that portion of the community that is serious about education and serious about change and implementation of what they're learning so that they can change. So this is more of what I expected. The first program, okay, curiosity. Second program, now we find out who's serious about actually wanting to learn. Why is this important? It's important because if you're not serious about learning, then don't be serious about complaining. I have, whether it's after Salatul Jumu'ah or after a Salat, or people catch me in stores, believe it or not, at traffic lights, they don't care. Right? Brother, I want you to talk about this. Can you do a khutbah about that? Can you do a program about this? We want you to speak about that. I'd love to hear you speak about such and such. Right? We have this problem. We have that problem. I'm so upset at this board. I'm so upset at this community. I'm so upset at this Muslim, blah, 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 blah. What are you doing to bring about positive change? Complaining is easy. We also call it Monday morning quarterback, right? After the fact, you sit off on the side and talk about I would have done it like this, and I would have did this, and if I was the quarterback, I would have threw the touchdown, and no, you wouldn't. You know why? Because you can't throw touchdowns from your couch in your living room. Meaning that if you are not actively engaged in the community, if you are not showing up for educational opportunities, if you are not actively trying to improve your own personal situation and relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you are part of the problem. Nobody likes to hear it, but there it is. It is what it is. So when people are like, I'm worried about my kids, are you? Are you worried about them enough to show up and learn? I'm worried about the akhirah and the iman of my children. Are you? Do you know your deen so that way you can be a practical example? Can somebody let the kids in, please? Do you know your deen well enough as a parent to be a practical example, a representation of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam inside of your own home for your kids? Are you teaching them Islam or your own subjective beliefs and opinions? Are you teaching them Islam or are you teaching them societal norms? Are you teaching them to fear you or are you teaching them to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So when we have educational programs and we see a response from the community, it's kind of like shoes. Like, where the heck is he going with this? Shoes. You want to find out what's going on with the community in a masjid? Look at how they organize their shoes. Come in for Jumu'ah and see their shoes. Go to the bathroom on Yom Jumu'ah and see what is the condition of the bathroom in the wudu area. How people treat each other in the parking lot as they're coming and they're going. Meaning that there are things that people don't think about that are indicators of the overall health and well-being, or the lack thereof, of any community. One of those indicators is how well does that community respond to educational programming? I said respond. I didn't say attend. Attending is just the beginning. The response is the practical application, which is supposed to take place afterwards, which changes the life of the person. When the life of the person changes, then it changes their human interactions, meaning that they become a source of, hopefully, positivity within that community, within their family, in their workspace, in their living environment, like in their neighborhood, what have you. Yeah. May Allah accept all of us. This is the reason why I don't, people was like, you should do, brother, I think I'm done with imamat. I don't want to do imamat anymore. I don't want to do, like, even resident scholar. I don't want to do it anymore. Be very frank, open, and honest with you. I've done it for years. I've seen problems in different places which are identical. The solutions also identical. But too often, more often than not, you find that the Muslim community is not willing to respond, is not willing to react. Everybody has their opinions, their perspective. Everybody likes getting angry at everybody else. Everybody likes blaming everybody else. Because all that's easy. It's simple. And it makes us feel good about ourselves. Ego gets a nice little boost, right? Yeah, this person is like this and that person is like that. Not like me, of course. You all know me. Yeah. No. You want to know where you stand with Allah? Know where you stand with the inheritance of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You want to know where you stand with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Then know where you stand in your representation of him. And if you don't know him, then you cannot represent him. If you do not know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then how can you have a relationship with him? So if I tell you that, I know Samir, really, tell me about him. He's a guy, he works, he's got a family, he talks. Really, he talks? Yeah, he talks. You don't know Samir, do you? Well, I've seen him, I heard of him. Some people told me about him. I know people that have met him. But you don't know Samir, do you? Okay, fine, no. And when we say, do you know somebody, we also understand that there's a nuance that's there in the question, isn't there? Right? So you say, do you know Samir? Like, you mean, do I know him? Right? You want me to say araftuhu, right? So I know him. Not he's an acquaintance, or like he works in another cubicle at the same office, or do you know him? Do you have a relationship? So now as Muslims, do you know Allah? Meaning, do you have a relationship with him? Because the first thing that we cover in Aqidah when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that you must understand something first and foremost. And we were just talking about it after Salah briefly. Allah ta'ala cannot be treated like a concept. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be treated as a mythical or a theoretical figure in history. Meaning, like we've got kids today that they'll sit and they'll talk about Thor and Zeus and Hercules, and in the same breath talk about like Venus and Mars and then Allah. As if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the dignity of Allah, the honor of Allah should even allow him to be mentioned in the same breath with lies. So you must understand that when we're talking about who is Allah, we are talking about the actual being, the entity who has named himself Allah. He is the one who controls everything without any exception. You exist because of him. Every molecule, every cell in your body, what you are breathing, what you are eating, when you go to sleep, when you wake up, you are dependent upon Allah. When we see, speak, hear, touch, taste, smell, think, it is only because of Allah. When we move, when our heart beats, when we blink, when we take a breath, when our hair grows or our fingernails grow, it is only because of Allah. Our risk comes from Allah. Your wife, your husband, your kids, your parents, they all come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your house, your cars, your possession, the clothes on your back, they are only from Allah. Laysa kamithlihi shay. There's nothing like him. Laysa kamithlihi shay. But what does this mean? Because now there's an argument that takes place. It's a childish argument, but fine. It's been had for centuries, so whatever. The anthropomorphic tendencies of human beings because of the arrogance and the egos of human beings. Anthropomorphic means that you're trying to take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and assign human attributes to Allah. You want to understand Allah like a human being. That's what it means. That is an absolute no-go in Islam. To what extent? When we talk about Yad Allah, the hand of Allah, ulama, mashayikh explain that when you talk about the hand of Allah, don't even put your own hand up like this. Fi yadillah. Don't even put your hand up like this, because this is even indicating that your hand is like the hand of Allah. Laysa kamithlihi shay. Your hand is not like the hand of Allah, nor is Allah's hand like your hand. But Allah sees, Allah hears. Does that, you think that means Allah has to have eyes? Do you think that Allah has to have ears? Because you understand something, your concept of the biological function of an eyeball, right, or an ear, was created by Allah. Do you understand? The systems, the biological systems that you and I use on a regular basis, we don't just speak out of magic. There's a system, a biological system that is in our bodies that is used. Same thing for olfactory or for auditory or whatever the case may be. There is a system. That system has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you think that Allah ta'ala is now also subjected and controlled, constrained by those same systems of creation? Cannot be. Because the creator cannot be bound by creation. This is a very important point. So I'm going to say it 3 times. The creator cannot be bound by creation. What does that mean? It means that now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Jannah, this is Jannah, which is also creation, is beyond what you have ever seen, heard, or can even imagine. So Jannah is beyond your comprehension, and it is creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is not creation, he is the creator, al-Khaliq. He is beyond your imagination. Well, how do you know? Because as soon as you and we begin to imagine anything, we are confounded and confined at the same time by 2 very strict parameters, which there's no way for us to transgress. Time and space. Time and space. You can say time and place, that's fine too. Okay? So as soon as you and I begin to think something, do something, etc., it has to occur within the realm of time and space, both of which are the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as soon as you imagine something, that thing by default is also now bound by time and space. So your thought is creation. Your thought, your thinking, it is creation. That's the reason why you and I, we can't even want anything. Irada. Right? Except that what? Arada Allah. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to intend for us to intend. Tawfiq, the ability to do something, is from Allah. Wallahu khalaqakum wa ma ta'amanun. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you and what you are doing. So the reason why you cannot comprehend Allah in your mind, because if you could, then that meant that Allah Ta'ala has now become trapped within your imagination, bound within creation, bound within the parameters of time and space. And then he wouldn't be God, would he? So that was the thing about Islam that, like, oh, I knew. Oh, I knew this was the truth. What was it? The understanding of God. Every previous explanation about God that I had ever encountered had always been flawed. Always. Not that like a child can pick it out. Okay? Flawed. With what? Human weaknesses. Human frailty. So that lets us know right from the very beginning, right? Problem. But then in the fold of Islam, the explanation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh, now this is God. This is how God is. God will speak to you and say, I will do this to you and I will do that to you. I will reward you and I will punish you. And do what you want. That's God. That's God that can sit there and say, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that can sit there and say, go do what you want because you can't escape me. Only Allah can say that. Only Allah can talk to Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam and say to him, you think that what they're saying to you and about you is bad? You are here for me. They hate you because of me. They love Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy amongst them. Even his enemies trusted him. They loved him. He was known to possess a noble and pure character. So where did all the animosity and enmity come from? Rabbuna Allah. Our Rabb is Allah. Wahdahu la sharika lah. No partners, sons, daughters, associates, equals, rivals, nothing. He is only one Allah. And that was enough that now his family turned on him. So Allah Ta'ala is talking to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and said, you think this is bad? What you're doing, what you're going through? You're only going through it because of their rancor and their animosity and their enmity with me. Why do you think people hate Muslims? We don't look alike. We don't even act alike. Although we're supposed to be all acting alike, but we don't. We're supposed to be acting like Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I mean, we're all supposed to act alike, but we don't. Okay, fine. We have different jobs, different heights, different weights, some male, some female, some from this country, some from that country, some rich, some poor, some educated, some not so educated, different professions. What the heck is it about us as Muslims that has drawn so much enmity and animosity that across the world, people look at us with danger, fear, animosity, enmity, distrust? It is only because of one reason. Rabbuna Allah. It's because of the kalima that each and every one of us carry. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That is the only reason. And that's the reason why. Cut your beard. Take your hijab off. Take your topi off. Take your kufi or your khadansa, whatever you want to call it, whatever language. Take it off. Take your thobe off, abaya, dressed up like a Westerner. You can go into hiding and they will love you. Change your name. Leave your language back home. Act like them. They will love you. They will love you. I think you went red. This microphone's going and I'm loud enough. So when we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're looking at this, because we said that what? Allah can, I said 3 times, right? Allah cannot be bound by his creation. He is the creator. So what we're saying when we're saying this is that we have to understand something. Allah ta'ala tells us, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, that as far as knowledge is concerned, you have been given very little. Now, that qalila is collective. The Mufassirin and the ulama, they said this is وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. That's all of us collectively. So all of us collectively, compared with the knowledge that is out there, we have so very little. Now, if you want to think about like how intense that can get, when Musa alayhi salam and Khidr alayhi salam, when they're on the boat and they're having a conversation, right? And Khidr alayhi salam asked Musa alayhi salam, he asked him, right, are you the most knowledgeable person? He says, yes. And it wasn't a matter of ego, it wasn't a matter of arrogance, it wasn't a matter of pride. It was a matter of Musa alayhi salam understanding his maqam, his level, his daraja. Because he understands that I am receiving wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm receiving direct communication from the creator of the universe. I am receiving wahi. I've received the Torah, right? So yes, I have the most knowledge of anybody else. But now Khidr alayhi salam, because he's there to do what? Teach. We forget this in the story of Khidr alayhi salam. The whole point was him to be a teacher. So now Khidr alayhi salam, he says, your knowledge and my knowledge. Now, why did he include his knowledge? Your knowledge and my knowledge. Because Musa alayhi salam, he was ilmu tashriya, right? Ilmu sharia, the knowledge of sharia, laws, human civilization, right? Khidr alayhi salam, ilmu taqween, cosmological knowledge. How the cosmos and how causality, cause and effect, how it works. How does the system that Allah Ta'ala has in place within the universe, how does it function? Okay? And that was the knowledge of Khidr alayhi salam. Between the two of them, you have the knowledge of the system and the people within the system. So he looks at the bird on the bow of the boat, dipping its beak in the water. One shiny drop, you can imagine, like hanging off the beak of the bird. And he says, your knowledge and my knowledge, compared to ilmullah, is less than the drop of water on the beak of this bird compared with the ocean. So in order for us to truly comprehend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in totality, you must also be able to, because we're talking about the that of Allah, because people are like, well, how come I can't okay, fine. You want to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Here's the thing. Then you're not going to be able to say, wahdahu la sharika lah. Because in order for you to be able to fully comprehend Allah, then you must be on par with Allah. You must have the same abilities as Allah. Because you have to be able to, the threshold itself, you have to be able to hold it. So in order for you to say, like, I want to truly know Allah, all of Allah, the whole of Allah, you can't even hold the ilm of Allah. None of us can. Not even all of us collectively. Forget about everything else. Just the knowledge of Allah is beyond your comprehension and your capacity even to retain. Because all of this is supposed to do what? Make us humble. That's where the real problem is in understanding who Allah is that a lot of times it's not being introduced through the lens of rububiyyah and ubudiyyah. Rububiyyah, alastu bi rabbikum, right? The ayat wa alast, meaning that am I not your Rabb? Allah Ta'ala asked, who? All of us. Alastu bi rabbikum. Now, what does the word Rabb mean? To let you know how important this question is, it deals directly, it is a primary component in the exact purpose for why you even exist. Meaning, there's something horribly and horrifically wrong right now in this very moment if you do not know what the meaning of Rabb is. Because that means that you've been living your life all the way up until this point without that knowledge. Rabbi, the ya mutakallim that comes on the end is indicating my Rabb. So there's actually a pronoun on the end. So Rabbi, my Rabb, Rabbuna, our Rabb. Rabbun, singular form. Rabb, where you drop off the tanween. All right, stop. When you stop, sakin. Okay? So now, let's look at rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does Rabb actually mean? Rabb usually gets translated as Lord. And I like doing this. How many of you know what the word Lord means? Exactly. Right? The word Lord in the English language used to be used for like landowners, right? We know that we still use landlord, isn't it? Okay. So basically, these were people that were considered to be nobles. And for a lack of a better term, in modern day vocab, we would say they were the employers. They were the bosses. They were the CEOs. Right? Meaning they run the show. That's a very human and superficial, generic representation of it. Right? But let's step it up because we're talking about creator of the universe. Now, when you're talking about Rabb, because yes, you can be Rabb too. Each and every hole for you in your own homes, like the men, you are Rabbul Bayt. Okay, that comes specifically in the hadith. Even Rabbul Bayt has the haqq of leading salah in his own house, regardless of who's there. All right, the Rabbul Bayt, you are the Lord of your own house. All right, but Rabbul Alameen, well, that's something different. Rabb, forget Lord, master. That word you understand. That word you know. Master. Meaning what? Now we can look at ubudiyyah. A master has a slave. Now you understand master and slave-master relationship. That is something within our time period, although granted, it does have a very, it is very darkly nuanced, all right? But we're going to deal with that right now, inshallah. So now when you look at this ubudiyyah and rububiyyah, this is the components and the definition of the relationship between the creator of the universe and us as his creation. So now with rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is this understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the master. He's the one who dictates. He is the one who sets our objectives, decides our purpose in life, brings us into existence. He is the one who sustains us. And he is also the one that we are supposed to go to with all problems. He is the only problem solver, your master. But he is also the one who establishes the criterion for judgment. You think about your employer, right? So the employer says, I want you to do this job. Okay, fine, no problem. How do you want me to do the job? Who decides that? The master does. To what degree, to what extent? Who decides that? The master does. I want it cleaned up this much. I want it done to this extent, right? So the parameters of, in Agile Scrum, what is the definition of done, right? So what is the definition of done? So what does it mean when you say that now the work is done? Who decides when it's done? When is Salah finished? Do you know when Salah is finished, technically? With the first salam. No, the first salam, meaning like when you're finishing your salah, we just made asr. When is it technically done? Who gets to decide that? When is salah complete? It is only Allah, the master. But then the master also does one other critical thing. Just like boss at work. Judges whether you did a good job or not. And then rewards or punishes. Elevates or demotes. That is also the prerogative of the Rabb, the master. Isn't that who Allah Ta'ala is to all of us? Now with that, if you have a master, then there's also, with the employer, there's the employee, slave. Or some people prefer servant. And actually, most people, when they use the term servant, for them, it's actually more accurate. Because what's the difference between the two? What's the difference between a servant and a slave? If you remember, it did the khutbah, right? It did said that, that people translate Muhammad abduhu wa rasuluh. And then they say Muhammad is his servant and messenger. And this is wrong. This is a wrong translation. I'm telling you right now. It's being recorded. You have people go look at it afterwards. I'm telling you it's wrong. Because there's a difference between slave and servant. A servant is just an employee. He'll come give you a certain amount of time, or she'll come give you a certain amount of time. You give him a specific amount of work to do. You tell him, this is what I'll pay you for that work. There's an agreement there. There's a contract that is there. Okay? That's an employee. That's a servant. The master doesn't own the employee, right? You hire, you fire, right? But the servant feels a degree of independence, right? From the master, from the employer, from the boss. A slave, basically that. It's not like that. A slave sees himself or herself as an extension of the master, as a possession of the master. A slave does not think, see, comprehend, function even with the idea or the notion that they own anything, not even their own lives. So now when people like Ibrahim alayhi salam are saying, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. That my salat, which is a microcosm, that's the reason why it comes first. This is not time for tafsir. My salat, my effort, my sacrifice, my life, my death are all for that one Rabb, Allah. What kind of Rabb? Rabbul Alameen. The Rabb of every realm, every dimension, everything in existence. Please don't translate it as planets or worlds. He's Lord of all the worlds. Like subhanallah, this is translations. Like I'm so, alhamdulillah, I owe my teachers who had the time and patience to teach me Arabic. I can never repay them. Otherwise, I'd have been stuck with translations, and Allah knows best. Allah Akbar. Rabbul Alameen, not Lord of the worlds. Okay, you start thinking of Lord of the worlds, and like we're gonna have kids start thinking about movies and this and that and the other. Like no. Master, Alameen, Alim. So when in fiqh, whether it's fiqh or Aqidah or when we talk about an Alim, okay, we like Alim al-Mithal, right? Alim al-Barzakh, Alim al-Arwah, right? We're talking about realms of existence. Alim al-Barzakh, where they're kind of like waiting room, so to speak, okay? What happens to the soul after you die? Alim al-Arwah, the realm where all the souls exist before. So Barzakh, after you die. Arwah, before you die. Excuse me, before you're born. Alim al-Mithal. Alim al-Mithal is for Muslims. It is that place where you go, where you have true dreams. You exist there. You are living there. There is a reality that is there. And Allah is the Rabb of that place too. It only exists because of him. You are only there because of him. All harm and benefit, even in that place, is only from him. So now when you think about Rabbul Alameen, Lord of the worlds, master of all realms of existence. You see the difference? So now when you look at the Rabb, and now I'm saying, am I a slave or a servant? Do not call Muhammad, Habibullah, the servant of Allah. It is demeaning to him. You call him the slave of Allah because he is the one who defines ubudiyya for us. Uswatun hasana. He is the one who defines slavery for us. You want to know what a slave is supposed to be like? You look at Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You want to know what a Rabb is supposed to be like? You look towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the reason why husbands, fathers, as Rabbul Bayt, how are you supposed to be in your home? How does Allah introduce himself as a Rabb? Right after Rabbil Alamin, what comes next? Is that to remind you of Al-Fatiha? Seriously? Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So that means that in our own homes, you want to have more practical Aqidah? How are we supposed to be in our own homes as Rabbul Bayt? Allah shows us how to be the Rabb for the entirety of creation. You just have to do it in your home. Be merciful, be compassionate, be empathetic in your own home. Treat your dependents how you want Allah Ta'ala to treat you. Be patient with them the same way you want Allah to be patient with you. Forgive them the way that you want Allah to forgive you. Isn't that practical? And do not get upset. I was newly married, facing newly married challenges. So, of course, I wanted somebody to complain to. So I sat to get some nasiha, some advice. And a young energy, fired up, upset with my wife. She's doing this and that and the other, and she won't do this, and she won't do this. And he's just like very calmly, how's your salah? He goes through this whole I want to let my tirade out here, okay? I'm trying to release some pressure release valve is about to swing full open, all right? Right? He asked me about my salah. He asked me about my tahajjud. He asked me about my adhkar, my tilawat al-Quran, right? He's asking me, and I'm just getting more and more upset, confused, and at the same time, you're a horrible listener, okay? So finally, I crack. Brother, see, this is the whole reason why, blah, blah, blah. I said a whole bunch of stupid stuff and that I did istighfar and told before afterwards, right? But I need help with keep my marriage together. He says, the reason why you're having difficulties with your dependents is because you are having difficulties with your Rabb. Fix the relationship with your Rabb and let your Rabb fix your relationship with your dependents. Doesn't Allah control their hearts? Don't they belong to Allah? Isn't Allah the only one who changes people? So stop being the Rabb and acting like the Rabb in front of Allah in regards to your dependents. Be the slave of Allah with your dependents, and then you'll be a proper Rabb. Because in Islam, who is the best leader? The best slave, not servant. Slave. Who do you want leading your communities? You're leading your boards, leading your countries, leading your organizations. You don't want servants. You want slaves. Trust me. You want the slaves of Allah, ibadullah. That's who you want. Because these are people that have already sold their lives to Allah. These are people that are no longer interested in this dunya. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you heard me say, he is our example of ubudiyyah. He is the pinnacle of ubudiyyah. Being the abd of Allah, being the slave of Allah. Who is the best leader in Islam? You think it's a coincidence? The best leader is the best slave? Okay, fine. An anomaly. Who's the next leader in Islam? What kind of slave was he? What about the one after him? Or the one after him? Or the one after him? When you look at al-Khulafa al-Rashidun, what do you see? Do you see servants or do you see slaves of Allah? And when the slaves of Allah were no longer in charge, what happened? Oh, there is one. There's periodically throughout history, but in the earlier times, we had Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah. They call him the second Umar. Umar al-Thani, subhanallah. He was also assassinated, by the way, but 2.5 years. That's how long he had. Now, mind you, he was a dandy before. You know what a dandy? Huh? A dandy, a fop. These days, before, like, there's so many different terms that we use, like, I don't think it's appropriate here. Like metrosexual, like that. Like, you wear the best clothes and the best, like, itar, and go get your hair done, and, like, look at my nails and all that type of, right? Subhanallah. He was from the elite class of society. He's married to the daughter of the king, Abdul Malik. Right? Fatima. When he was chosen to be the leader, his wife, she talks about him. She said before that moment, he was one way. After that moment, he didn't even share the bed with me. He spent all of his nights on the sajada. He gave away his wealth. He told his wife, your jewelry, you're going to have to choose. It needs to go back to the Bayt al-Mal. You're going to have to choose. You want to be married to me and give it back to the Bayt al-Mal, or you can keep it and you're free. Intelligent wife. She's thinking about her akhirah. Keep the jewels. I'm taking you. You're the real gem here. Do you know it was so difficult for him at that time? He could not get ulama to help him. He was immersed in all the political situation was a wildfire at the time. Anybody who understands history of human beings and human culture and civilization, anytime you lose your leadership, it creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, there's always those who want to try to fill that vacuum. Those people who are vying for power, right? So now, like, imagine you get this power. You weren't even the first in line for it, right? And then on top of that, you get power and go in. The first thing you do is tick off everybody else in the system. I'm going to reform this and I'm going to change this. And we're going back to the ways of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we're going to stop this and you're not going to do that. And we're going to bring this back. And we're going to bring that back. And like I said, within 2.5 years, his servant had been paid to poison him. Within 2.5 years. It doesn't change the fact that real leaders are defined first by being the real slaves of Allah. That's how you get qualified for leadership. That's the reason why Umar and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhuma can sit there and have an argument with each other. You be the leader. No, you be the leader. No, you be the leader. And why? When Umar spoke, Abu Bakr, because of his ubudiyyah, He recognized the truth of his words and he had to accept it. Not because he wanted it, but because I understood that this is the responsibility that comes with what Allah Ta'ala has already blessed me with. So now when we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this relationship of ubudiyyah and rububiyyah, right? So now the question is okay, well, if Allah is beyond my comprehension and beyond my imagination, how am I supposed to get to know and develop a relationship? Valid question. This is the primary reason why the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam were sent. To reintroduce, I use right? Because alastu bi rabbikum. Qalu bala shahidna. Our arwah, our souls, know the truth. It's in the fitrah of the human being. It's innately in you. It's your natural disposition. But now here, in this realm, in this alam al-dunya, that reminder has to come. A catalyst. Get things rolling again. So now this introduction, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam to introduce the people to Allah. Through what? Two things. Al-Asma, the names of Allah, right? And I know you know there's more than 99. I'll tell you that right now, okay? There's more than 99. Yes, the 99 names that comes in the hadith, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, but there's more than 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we know Allah ta'ala through his asma and his sifat, through his qualities, his attributes, his characteristics. This is how we know Allah. Then, one of the, as far as like the speech of Allah, kalam Allah, that is known as a sifa, or one of the sifat of Allah, a quality, an attribute, a characteristic, which means that the Quran itself, and this was the big thing during the Mihna, during the time of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah, is the Quran makhluk, is it creation or not? So the Mu'tazili, since we're doing Aqidah, so they come, they're like, the Quran is creation. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, like an unshakable pillar, right, of truth. He's like, ain't no way in the world I'm accepting that nonsense. And he stood firm. They tortured him. They did all types of very nasty and cruel things to him. Meanwhile, by the way, he's making dua for them. They narrate this. While being tortured, he's making dua for them. So now this sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, the Quran, kalam Allah, is an attribute of Allah. It's not the creation of Allah. So how do you get to know Allah? Through the Quran. Read it. That's right. There's the reason why when ulama are saying, like Muslims today, they don't understand who their Rabb is. And the ulama say, of course they don't. What do you mean, of course? They stopped reading Quran. The ones who do read don't have a love for the language, so they don't even know what's being said. Those who understand the language don't have a value for the actual pondering, tafakkur, and everything that's supposed to go along with the actual, like the ma'ana itself. Hey, do you understand what it says? Yeah, I understand what it says. It's kind of like sometimes when our kids are sitting there, right, and we're talking to them and like explaining to them, like da 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 like this and like this. Do you understand what I'm saying? Uh-huh. Okay, repeat it back to me. Like children, right? So the first thing is that I want to, because if you're thinking, I told you 45 minutes to talk about Allah, like we need days. We need days to just come in here. This is what the Sahaba used to do. Today, everyone wants to talk about politics. They want to talk about like this current event, this social issue, this thing, that thing. If you actually look in the lives of the Sahaba, right, and the Mutaqaddimin, do you know they used to sit and just talk about Allah? They would have gatherings just to talk about the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just to sit and talk about the blessings of Allah. Can you imagine like all of us to get together, like, yeah, we'll have some shy and some dates and everything, right? What are we gonna do? We're gonna sit outside and we're just gonna point out all the things that Allah Ta'ala has created and how Allah Ta'ala makes the leaves on the trees move and makes the wind go through and the sun rises and it sets, and we're just going to see and like the little gnat that flies by. Look, Allah's making that gnat fly by. Can you imagine that? Who does it? This is what they used to do. This is how they used to think. People talk about what's important to them. Nationalism is important to some people, so they always want to talk about their country. Education or their job is important to them, so they always want to talk about their particular field. Money is important to them, so they're always talking about how much they have or don't have, or how much this one has or doesn't have, or how much they want, or how they're going to get it. People talk about what's important to them. Even when we were going through fiqh and everything, I remember that the mu'allim, Mashaykh, he explained, he's like, because we had to learn all this vocabulary just for alcohol. The pots had different terminology, like it was like all this terminology just strictly related to alcohol. And the Shaykh is like, this lets you know how important within that civilization, within the culture, alcohol actually was, and how big of a deal it was for them to leave it. Because anytime something is important, he's like, look at this country. How many different types of alcohol are there? Think of all the different types of names. Anytime something is important, all the names come. People talk about it, right? It gets emphasis. It gets focus. The akhirah is what was important to them. Allah and His Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, is what was important to them. So what did they talk about? Sports? No. Politics? Social rescue? Everybody's a social superhero now, right? This social cause and that social cause, and I'm gonna demonstrate, like, whatever the issue of the month happens to be. It changes, and those people change with those issues. It's sad, but it is what it is. Do you catch my point? So now, do we talk about Allah? Do we read Quran so Allah can talk to us? Then do we make dua where we talk to Allah? When you have a problem, you have a situation. There's an issue. You know that moment. You know when you get informed, you find out, or it just happens. You know, you have that split second moment, the freak out moment, all right? This is the moment. In your moment, does your moment immediately turn towards Allah? Like, Allah, what am I going to do? Or, I hope I have enough money for this. All right? I hope, right? Does your gaze turn towards the creator or creation? That's Aqidah. That's practical Aqidah. When you get good news, Bashara. Oh, mashallah, you just graduated, you just did this, or this happened, or that a child is born, or you just got married. SubhanAllah. Do you think about the fun? Do you think about the ni'mah itself? Or do you think it is only my Allah that gave me this? And then do you think, what are the rights and responsibilities that go along with it? Because every last blessing has rights and it has responsibilities. And then immediately after that, what are the challenges and the dangers that come with this blessing? Because every last one of them comes with a challenge and a danger. There are risks with every blessing. What is the ultimate risk? That you will not fulfill this right. What is the right of every blessing? Gratitude to Allah. Does your gaze turn towards Allah? This is the questions that we have to ask ourselves. When people are saying, I have anxiety. Anxiety over what? Well, I don't know what this one is doing. I don't know what that one is doing. I'm not sure about what's going to happen in the future. It's like, I tell them, I say, me either. You know why? Because we're not God. You have anxiety because you're not God. You want to be, but you're not. You want to know what everybody's doing. You want to know what's going to happen in the future. You want to know what's in people's hearts. You want to know what people are saying when you're not around. You want complete knowledge. You want to know the things that you're just curious about. You want to know what your wife is doing. You want to know what your husband is doing. You want to know what your kids are doing. You want to know what your neighbor is doing, what this person at work is doing. You want to know everything. But you're not God. Stop having anxiety because you're not God. What is the opposite of anxiety? Tawakkal ala Allah. I don't know. My Lord does. I trust him. You see, it should be a comforting blanket that you wrap around you. It shouldn't drive you crazy. It should make you more sane. But what if they're doing this? Yeah, my Allah's there too. He says if there's two, he's the third. There's three, he's the fourth. That doesn't matter. He's with you no matter where you are. They can't hide from my Rabb. I don't need to know what they're doing. I don't need to try to control them. Not my job. Allah's job. He's the Rabb, not me. I'm the Abd. He tells me what to do, I do it. That's it. Simple. Not complicated. It's like depression. You know what depression is about? Anxiety is usually about knowledge. You know what depression is about? Usually. The other wing. I can't change this. I can't change this. I can't go here. I can't do that. I can't be where I want. I can't be who I want. I can't do what I want. Lack of power. I can't go back and change in the past. I can't stop this person from doing this. I can't stop this thing. I'm depressed. My husband won't do this. My wife won't do that. The kids won't do this. My parents won't do this. The country won't do this. Society won't do that. I don't know anymore. I don't even want to get out of bed. Why? You're upset, aren't you? Because you're not God? You want to get depressed because you're not God? Why would you want to be? Look at how people treat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look how Allah is treated. Even by Muslims. People say that I am Muslim and I'm Muslim. Look how Allah is treated. He gave us our purpose in life. We got people now fighting with each other about their rights as they completely disregard the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Forget, they don't even know what they are. Forget fulfilling them. They don't even know what they are. And now you're upset and you're depressed because you can't be God. But if you were, you wouldn't want to be. Let him control it. If he wanted you to do something, he would have gave you the ability, he would have gave you the power, the tawfiq. If he didn't, then he doesn't. And if he didn't, it's not your responsibility. And if he didn't, and it's not your responsibility, then there's no accountability. If he didn't give you the responsibility and there's no accountability, what are you worried about? Practical Aqidah. You look like there's no notes, there's no this is like basic stuff. I have like big books, piles of books in front of me, and in notes and got a PowerPoint, this and that. This is basic stuff. This is stuff that a Muslim should be putting into practice on a day-to-day basis. Because we encounter this type of stuff on a day-to-day basis. Granted, different levels, some more severe than others. But we face these challenges on a regular basis, where basically we are presented with a set of circumstances, a situation, minor or severe, where we don't have knowledge and we don't have ability. We can't control it. And now we have to decide what we're going to do, how we are going to respond and react internally. If you remember last week, we were talking about the qissa Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, right? But you remember Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he stopped and he paused to do what? Reflect. That moment of self-analysis, introspection, where he's now gauging what is going on internally here. Once he did that, and they come to a conclusion that he's tried and tested, because you got to make sure you're not lying to yourself. We love doing that. We're actually very adept at it, lying to ourselves, making us feel better about whatever the heck it is that we're trying to make ourselves believe. But after he was sure, like everything is in balance, then he says, Alhamdulillah. So now somebody does something, they don't fulfill your rights, they do something rude to you, they cheat you, like, how are you going to respond? How are you going to react? How did Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam respond and react to personal slights and things like that, right? How do you react and respond to this situation? How do you react and respond to that situation? Based on Aqidah. Now, as we're going through this, because we got another 7 weeks of contents, but 8 weeks in total, okay? So as we're going through this, people say, well, how can I apply this tomorrow? You don't just apply it tomorrow, you apply it also to all of your yesterdays. So meaning like, all right, I say, for instance, I've lived, 40, 50 years up until this point, and I didn't have that knowledge base that I needed from the beginning, meaning at the beginning of adulthood. All right, so that means that now, call it 40, right? So from 13 to 40. So I basically lived 27 years, 2/3 of my life in ignorance. In ignorance. Just kind of like doing whatever everybody else is doing, or what somebody taught me, or what I heard, or what I saw. It's kind of like a eclectic, haphazard mix of like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Some cultural, some religious, some societal, some blah, 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 whatever. Right? Hash. Oh, Lord, mercy on us. How did Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam respond to situations? How did the Sahaba respond to situations? How did they react? And sometimes it was good, sometimes it was not so good. When it was not so good, the corrections came, so we found out what was good, what was not good. But the template is there. If you and I don't know it, then of course we can't use it. And if we can't use it, that means we can't get the benefit from it. And if we can't get the benefit from it, then why are we surprised we have these challenges and these problems and issues that exist within ourselves, our families, and our communities? It only stands to reason. Right? So if I think about it, like, do time for Q&A, but if you think about it, we just went through the whole pandemic thing, right? So if there's a guy standing out the front door and he's like, you don't want to go in here. Everybody in there's got COVID. Everybody in there's got COVID. So go in at your own risk. He's like, I got to go. But then he goes in, but there's no protection. No gloves, no masks, no antibacterial, like, right? No protection. Just like blindly just goes in. You know there's danger there. And then he comes out, he's like, I think I'm sick. Really, genius? Did you figure that one all out by yourself? Of course you're sick. You went into an unprotected environment where there are sick people, and you went in without any caution or care, without knowledge, without understanding, without treatment. Don't be surprised you're sick. You know what you're going to go do now? Now you're going to go take it home. And you're going to get your wife sick. And you're going to get your kids sick. And you're going to get your co-workers sick because you are negligent. And thus, you are the risk. Remember where we started. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. If we are not actively engaged in our Islam, it doesn't mean you got to be like, a social butterfly in the community, and then not like, we're not talking about that, but actively engaged. That might just mean, like, you know what I can do? I'll come help populate the masjid for salah. I can't make it like I can probably only do Fajr and Isha, but like that's what I can do, right? When we have educational programs, I can do my best to show up. When you need volunteers in the community, I can do my best to show up. And then on my personal level, I got to do my best to change, to improve, to beg Allah to purify my heart. So that way, when I am around anybody, I become a source of positive change as a Muslim who is a representative of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Isn't that what we want to be? Hopefully. So when we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll close with this, when we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the biggest thing is you've got to make a distinction between creation and creator. Stop trying to look for or exist in a gray area where you think they overlap. There is no overlap at all. Zero. Allah is Allah, we are creation. He is above us and beyond us, and thus we say Subhanallah. He provides everything for us, and that's the reason why we say Alhamdulillah. He has full control over everything, and he's the one who decides our fates, and that's the reason why we say Allahu Akbar. And there's nobody else who can do this, and that's the reason why we say La ilaha illallah. You and I only need Allah. فَمَنْ يَمْلِكُ لَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا إِنْ أَرَادَ بِكُمْ ضَرًّا أَوْ أَرَادَ بِكُمْ نَفْعًا بَلْ كَانَ اللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. فَمَنْ يَمْلِكُ لَكُم. So who is there who's going to give you this ability, this milkiyah, the authority, the dominance is literally what it is. The dominance to help you at all, assist you, change anything, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants harm or benefit for you. Who's going to stop Allah? So when you're talking about taqwa and this consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this paying attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, giving Allah our full attention, engaging in the dhikr of Allah. Now you understand why dhikr is so important? Paying attention to Allah. So now when we're talking about taqwa, and we're talking about like inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, the most noblest, the most generous, the best amongst you are the ones with the most taqwa, are the ones who are doing this. They're taking this aqidah and they're putting it into practice in their day-to-day lives, actively. Actively. That's what taqwa is all about. It is realizing that, Ya Allah, you are the only one doing. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. You do whatever you want. I am nothing. And that's not some faux veneer of, what do you call it? Humility. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. Allah knows what I am, brother. Now, we're not talking about that fake stuff. We're talking about real love. No, like you have to understand, I'm a speck. I'm a speck in a universe that the rest of the universe basically does not care about or even knows about. The amount of time that I'm actually alive is less than the twinkling of a star. The people who are alive before me don't care about me. The people who will live after me will forget about me and they won't care about me, meaning that the vast majority of my existence is meaningless. Your job doesn't matter. You think it does. What do you do? What the heck do? You think it's so important that the rest of creation should care? That the generations of humanity that come after us should care, should think about you, remember you? There's nothing. Your own great-grandchildren are going to forget you. Yeah. People who will have your last name. Your blood will flow through their veins, and they won't care about you. So now this is when people get real sad. What's the meaning of life, man? What's the point? I don't matter. I'm just here and I'm gone. Woe is me. Oh, no. Buck up, old chap. Right? Why? Because Allah, the one who gave everything meaning, He is the one who's going to give your existence meaning. Now, there are different types of meaning. There's meaning in Jannah, and there's meaning in the other place. How do you want to be defined by Allah? How do you want Allah to establish the meaning of your existence on Yawm al-Qiyamah? You see the difference between just sitting and talking about? Okay, in the first line, it says that Allah is one. He's wahid. That means one, but not meaning that one, two, three, but one meaning just one, right? Look, divine singularity, if I got to explain that thing to you, like we're all the way literally step one, square one. That's not where you're having. I'm not talking to a bunch of like ignorant Muslims here. You know that there's only one Allah. The challenge is applying it. What does it mean to me? How should it change me? How should it impact my life? Because it should. If you and I do it right, may Allah help us, we will go through a natural progression, a maturation. It's a beautiful byproduct of it. Each and every one of you, no exceptions. You will go through a process of maturation. You will go through a process of development. Even Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through it on his level, granted, but he went through it. Abu Bakr, the Muslims in Mecca before Hijrah, they went through it. If you focus on Allah and if you commit to taking this Aqidah and putting it into practice, okay, the person you are today will not be the person you are tomorrow. The person that you are today, if you could see her tomorrow, you would say, Alhamdulillah. And if the person of your tomorrow could see you today, would say, Astaghfirullah. Yeah? Sound about right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for all of us. Again, this is not to mean like, brother, like you talk about Allah. Like, I kid you not, man, I'm dead serious. Days. You want to talk about Allah? We need days to just come together, bring some food, some tea, because we need some caffeine, okay? And we'll just sit and just talk about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then that's it. And we can do it for days. But this is not about that, right? This course is not about that. What this is a catalyst to get us to start thinking, to get us to start like reflecting. Where am I at right now? What have I been doing up until this point? How can I change what I have been doing, improve upon it, so I can get better results in the future, right? How can we were talking after, it was during the week, huh? The tidying after Salah. Be a rahmah. So simple, isn't it? Be a rahmah. That's it. How do I be a rahmah? Follow rahmatul lil alameen. He's a rahmah for the entirety of creation. Just follow his example. Trust me, whatever you're in, it's included in creation. So be a rahmah. Then you can say you are Abdul Rahman. Yeah. What are the two favorite names of Allah? Do you know? Huh? Abdul Rahman and Abdullah. What do you notice about both of those? Abd. Abdullah. And out of all the asma of Allah, Abdul Rahman. But Abd is in both of them. What becomes in our Shahada, we say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasuluh. No, that's not it. Abduhu wa Rasul. What comes before Rasul? Abd. It is on the back of being the Abd of Allah that he is a messenger of Allah. Being an abd is the highest status, right? So when you say Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is actually like, it's an adjective, basically, right? A Siddiq is actually a descriptive word describing what type of abd he is. Do you see it? So what type of slave? The true, honest, trustworthy, like this one has no lie in him. He's a real slave, the real deal. A Siddiq. And that's the reason why the only level above that is reserved for an Anbiya. What's the opposite of being a Siddiq? What's the opposite of Sidq? Oh, we don't like flip side of coins, do we? If I am not a Siddiq, if I'm not pure, if I'm not trustworthy, if I'm not honest, if it's all not there, pure, then that means that there's what? Contamination. There's still something wrong in the works, which means I still have work I need to do. So unless any of us are claiming to be a Siddiq, I'm not. We got work to do. There's no like room for our egos to be like, I'm doing enough. I had one brother, I was in one place, and Allah bless him. This brother was the president of a board. He says, brother, I thought we were doing fine. Now, mind you, one of the things I had to do in that community is I had to go through and I had to grade, like basically evaluate their children's educational program and then the community and then write the whole thing up, all right, for them. And then sit down with them, review, right, the summary, the conclusion, and then now present, like, these are the options. This is how you can improve your community if you want to, based on Deen. They got an F in both. They failed in both of them. The children's education, horrible. Teachers didn't know what they're doing. It was just horrible. The situation in the community itself, unfortunately, is becoming par for the course. But this brother, he's like, I thought we were doing a good job. I thought everything was fine. It's your ego. Your ego told you that. Your nafs told you that. Because if you knew your deen, and if your taqwa was activated, there's no way in the world you could have come to that conclusion. I'm not the smartest guy on the block, not even close. If I can see it, there are way more people more intelligent and more experienced than myself that can see it. You never consulted. You never had anybody, and then you come in and like you have me evaluate it. For what? Why are you so shocked? Is the purpose of the evaluation for like you want me to come and rubber stamp it, or is the purpose of the evaluation and the purpose of the evaluation for you to actually find out like what's not working so that it can be fixed? You see the difference? So be careful, please, inshallah. Questions, worries, I don't want to leave the whole time for Q&A because people start asking stuff about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gets themselves in trouble. Next week is a different story, inshallah. We have questions from the sister side. We can grab the. How should one deal with seeing a husband mistreating their dependents? Two things real quick. We have to define mistreating. Mistreating is not subjective. And that is in family counseling, marriage counseling, like all of that, advisement, that is a huge issue, right? People have their own subjective criterion in place as far as like what mistreatment actually is. As long as what we're kind of calling mistreatment is defined by Quran and Sunnah, right? Let Deen define what correct treatment is and is not. That way, you stop the fight of Is it your version or is it my version or his version or their version? Let it be Allah's version and the version of his messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But now, if, say, for instance, based on that, they're mistreating them. Now, this is where you help the despot, impious ruler, no matter what. Isn't it? It comes like that in the hadith. You help them whether they're the leader, whether they're doing the wrong thing or the right thing. And non-Muslims, they pick up on this and they're like, oh my gosh, see, there it is right there. No, 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 no. If they're doing the wrong thing, it means, it depends on the situation, right? If it's anger management, calm them down. If it's a matter of like unfair treatment, then it could be like, you gotta, ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna have to use some hikmah here, okay? But the big thing here, the big answer is, how do you help that person in a very positive manner to change? How do you help this person change? By you being positive. Yelling, screaming, telling them that like you're the worst husband, the worst father, worst wife, worst mother. It's counterproductive, okay? But how can you influence your spouse to become better, to reach his or her full potential? That should be the focus. Not just as it relates to dependence, but as a whole. As a whole. We got to teach our kids this. Marriage is about, you have a responsibility to bring out the best in that other person. That's your responsibility. Not just standing there like, give it to me. Give you what? Your best. All of it? Yes, right now. I want all of your best. All 100%? Well, if it's 99, it's not your best, is it? Okay. So like we gotta like let's be realistic here. We are all trying, none of us are perfect, okay? So how do we help each other to improve and bring out the best in each other? This one, we're going to, this is in Hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, يعني أخبرني عن إحسان. What is ihsan or excellence in Islam? And so it comes in like to worship Allah Ta'ala as if Allah Ta'ala is, as if you see Allah, and if not, then know that Allah Ta'ala is watching you, seeing you. We are actually going to cover that in more detail specifically because ihsan, Iman, Islam, and ihsan, these are three very important vocabulary words that we need to make sure that we have properly defined before we finish the course of this, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan jazak. Please don't ask me about, can Allah create a rock that only like nobody can, like Allah can't even, like don't do anything, like get the most ridiculous stuff.
I kind of have a question, but I don't think we have time.
You can at least ask it.
Okay. The question is, how do we balance between making action and doing our efforts, which is akhd al-asbab, and the trust in Allah and His, the qadar.
Where, Jazakallah, because you gave the answer right there in the question. When we cover qadr, we will have to have a whiteboard here for qadr, so just giving you a heads up. So when we cover qadr, and we will go over it in detail, because this is one of the 6 articles of faith, and unfortunately is one of the most misunderstood aspects of something that defines us as Muslims. Okay, so when we cover qadr, there will be a whiteboard. We're going to go into some detail, but that position between trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but yet still functioning within the cosmos itself, within the realm of causality. We will go through that in detail, inshallah. And more than likely, that one qadr doesn't take that long to explain, but inevitably you will probably have more questions. So that'll probably be more of a 30-minute content, 30-minute Q&A, inshallah. Yes, please. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan jazak. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك نستغيث